I'd like to call our statutory meeting of July 14th, 2014 to order, please. Roll call.
Mr. Kudrick?
Present.
Ms. Bowles?
Here.
Ms. Crowd is absent. Mr. Theed is absent excused. Ms. Funderburg?
Here.
Ms. Beard?
Here.
Ms. Buckley is here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item on the agenda is nominations for our officers. And before we get started on that, I just want to let the board know that these terms will only be till December, because in our regular meeting that we're having tonight, we're going to be doing a board policy revision so that our statutory meeting is held on January 1st from now on, so that it's in line with the new election laws. And so we verified with our legal counsel on how we should do that, and he said we still have to do because our bylaws aren't revised right now, we still need to hold our statutory meeting tonight, still nominate and have our officers, but their term will end in December. And then in January, we're going to have another statutory meeting, and then those people will be on for the full year. I'm going to make a suggestion. I'm willing to do it if the other officers are willing to do it. I'm willing to serve the remainder 6 months and then start fresh in January. But I think we need a decision on the board on that, or nominations, however you guys want to do it.
Madam Chair, when I saw that, and I saw that we had to change it in January, to me, it only makes business sense to keep it and then make the change in January, because with all the paperwork we have to fill out, so you have to change all your paperwork, and then you got to change it again in January. So I think it just makes sense for us just to leave it until the board elections, and then in January, just do it then.
I
That's
agree
my
with
opinion.
that. I think that makes sense too.
Okay, so then we will need a motion stating that we want to keep the nominations for the offices of president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer the same. I don't know if we do them by name.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Kudrick?
I'll make a motion that we keep all the current officers in the position and titles the same until January 1 for our next statutory meeting after the elections.
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Kraut. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kudrick,
Yes.
Ms. Bowles.
Yes.
Ms. Kraut,
Yes.
Ms. Funderburg,
Yes.
Ms. Beard,
Yes,
Ms. Buckley votes yes.
and that motion carries
Just
6-0. Okay, the next item on our agenda is designation of depositories.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Kudrick.
I move the Board of Education name Co-America to continue as a depository and that the President, Vice President, Secretary, Treasurer, and Director of Business and Operations and Superintendent of the School have the authority to sign authorizing documents requiring 2 of the 6 actual signatures or face mail signatures.
Support. Any discussion?
Motion made by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Funderburg. Discussion, Mrs. Funderburg.
Okay, and I guess this is kind of going in line with the whole business aspect of us having to switch from doing things that first meeting in July, to switching it to January. As far as our depositories, our attorneys, auditors, does it make business sense to switch that also to January? And the reason why I ask is because I remember back when they actually changed the laws, one of the couple of issues that we were having, and our past business manager chose to keep it in July, was because that's how her fiscal year started. But seeing that we have to be in line with how the state has us mandated now, does that impact the the depository portion and the attorneys and that kind of thing. So I'm wondering, do we keep that the same, or do we also change that? My other concern is how that ties into how we serve as officers, because right now, one of the things that we'll probably be discussing, I'm more than sure that it's probably just crazy for Tamika, because when Ms. Bowles started, she started in November, but she piggybacked off of one of the prior officers, what they had designated or left over from their,
January.
well,
started in
January, but
January.
I guess what I'm saying is the
When she
fiscal
came
year
on the
started
board-
through our
In June,
stipends.
so those
Yeah.
things were still in place.
Okay.
Right, and so the way the money is allotted for board members as well is kind of switching over as well. So I guess I'm just wanted to get maybe some clarity on, should we leave it like we're doing it, or if there's a way that it can be done a bit simpler, because if I feel like it will get more confusing if we get new board members coming in January on, well, where does their fiscal year start financially for them doing their professional development and their board stipends. And so just to keep everything kind of crystal clear for everybody on, do we prorate it, or how does that happen, and what does that look like? So I guess I'm just wondering, do we just keep it the same, and it's from June 30th to July 1st, or do we switch over to January to December 31st?
Madam
For-
Chair?
For our stipends.
Well, not even our stipends, but just for the fiscal part of it as well, so.
No problem with it.
Madam Chair, on the board side of it, as the members for the compensation, if the terms are from January 1 to December 31st, that's the way the allotment should be. I mean, you tried to do it in the middle of the month, it's going to, the middle of the year is going to.
registered for a
but
fiscal year from
you-
July 1st to June 30th. with the
Your
state.
your election term is January 1.
Yeah.
So your election term is from January 1 to December 31st of 4 years after you were elected. So it should be January 1 until that term. The only reason it got kind of confusing when Ms. Bowles came on is because our great leader, Governor Schneider, and we'll call him that, and came up with this new idea of how board members should be elected and when they're elected. So that kind of really threw a turmoil. So right now, we're kind of coming to the end of that. So this cycle, I think you're the last one, Sandy, that's kind of, you were bumped up further than I think the rest of us, because the way your years got in there. So everybody else, Tamika's actually the first one that's under the new system.
Right.
So she was the first one that actually got onto that January 1, and everybody else is,
Right.
so if you make it January 1 to December 30, it's going to be easier. The only thing, I guess, Dr. Mensah, is the depositories. I mean, the school starts July 1st, so we can't really, in the middle of the year, want to change depositories. That's going to make your bookkeeping crazy.
Right.
So
then how do
it would
we
probably be
balance it?
sensible to keep the depositories and all that as July 1st, like we are doing currently, right?
Yes.
Okay, but for the compensation of the board, is it confusing if a board member starts January 1 and goes to December 31st? You got 12 months.
Right,
It should be
but our fiscal
fairly,
year starts July 1st. So right now, as board members, we start back at zero. Well,
Starting-
I mean, we're starting at the beginning of
A new
how
cycle.
of a new cycle, and so I just.
it should be January 1, because I think, wouldn't that make your bookkeeping clearer? If I'm on the board and I've used all my allotted funds by June, then, oh well. If Ms. Bowles tends to save hers until the later part of the year and uses hers, that's her business. I think it would be a lot clear cut, don't
So
you?
that's why I was like, I just wanted to have some clarity, and so that it's crystal clear on how we're gonna do it, and are we just gonna stay status quo, or?
Well,
what
basically,
does that look
what works
like?
best for you? That's going to be the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Right now's the time to make a change if
I
you're going
don't
to do it.
think it's going to be a big deal. When it comes to contracts, yes, that will be a problem. But for stipends, I don't think that will be.
For the 7 members on the board, it's not an issue.
It's not a big deal.
Okay.
So we could do it January 1 till January 1 to December 31st, and it was cut and dry.
Carol?
Just for a little clarification too, when you elect new officers in January, and then Anna will give you new signature cards.
Okay.
So that it won't change your depository, but you would have different people that
Right.
will be authorized to sign your checks.
Right.
And that would all be done in January so that it's in line with your officers. Because I asked her about that, so that's how I know.
And since Mrs. Bales didn't have the mic, I'll just, for the public, she stated that our, in regards to the depositories, there would be new signature cards, put out with the new officers in
Yes.
January, so.
Right.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor, by Mr. Kudrick, seconded by Mrs. Funderburg. Any more questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. The next item on the agenda is the schedule of meetings.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Kudrick.
move the Board of Education of Romulus Community Schools District schedule their meetings on the second and fourth Monday of each month as presented, in keeping with the school calendar at 6 p.m. for the 2014-2015 year. And do you want all the meetings read off on the back, or?
Well,
But
these-
they'll be posted basically the
these will be posted, right.
second and fourth Monday of each month.
Right.
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Kraut. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. The next item is naming of attorneys.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Kudrick.
move the Board of Education employ the firm of Keller, Tome, PC, and the Thurm firm to act as attorneys for the Board of Education for 2014-2015 school year with the annual amount not to exceed $35,000.
Support. Discussion.
Motion made by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Funderburg. Discussion?
So these are our current firms and there'll be no change then?
Correct.
And this is the amount that they were awarded for the last year?
Well, they couldn't go over that
They
amount.
can't go over that without it
If
coming
they got to come to us to have it approved if they spend more than that. So that's for the entire year.
Well, how much did they spend last year? Do we know? I mean, because, I mean, I was looking at some of the other things that we have coming on the board, that's coming up on the other agenda. And some of their contracts say that they give legal advice too. So I'm wondering how much of what these other organizations have kind of overlap with what's going on here, and if there's a possibility that we can renegotiate if some of these other organizations passed, or get a lesser fee for the attorney that we have because of it overlapping.
One
What-
of the items I think that we do, I mean, as president of the board, when I get legal advice, a lot of times I will check with MASB first because I can get that legal advice free of charge. And then if there's a discrepancy still, then that's when I will call our legal counsel.
Okay.
He does not always charge us unless it's, I don't even know how to, right, unless it's gonna lead to more litigation or something to that effect, then that's when he would charge us.
Sometimes on a phone call, sometimes it can just be a very simple answer and they do it, no problem. But
Right.
just to give you, I don't know, Ms. Bowles, if you recall, but I know there's a couple of board members here. At one time, there was no limit on what legal fees were, and the board recommended that there be a limit on the fees, so if it exceeds that, and now that some of the central office has changed, I know Ms. Buckley and Ms. Funderburg has been through, most of the time, the biggest part of our legal fees come through is when we start getting into contract negotiations. So next year, there's no contract, so we should be okay there. It's the 15-16 year we'll probably start getting into, that's when more of the legal fees usually come in too.
And I do know too, Ms. Bowles, that the special ed department uses the legal firm frequently because of, it's all legally driven. So
Right.
if there's any questions by parents, or they're, contending due process, I call them to make sure that we have followed everything legally. And I know that in previous files, it looks like it's about once every 3 years. There's something extensive that it looks like the law firm has had to draft paperwork for the special ed department or something like that. But for the most part, same thing, I call the county first. If they can't answer it for me specifically, then I'll ask superintendent to call the law firm. And it's usually just phone calls. It looks like it's about once every other year, once every 3 years, we come into a situation where we need them to draft something for the special ed department. So I do know that that's where some of the expense comes in as well.
I think my only concern is not so much with just the attorneys, I'm looking at some of the other organization stuff that we have coming across the table, and they already have a set amount for us to approve tonight. So I'm thinking like, if this gets approved and he's already saying not to exceed up to $35,000, then maybe if some of this other stuff is on other documents or from other organizations that have a price for some of the same things, we might need to contact them and let them know, okay, we already have an attorney that's taking care of X, Y, and Z, so how much would the fee be for the other portion versus versus them giving us a flat rate for something that we may not even need because it's already covered with the attorney. That was my only concern.
Yeah, I think for the organizations that we partner with, that we're paying the dues, I think that's what enables us to keep that at $35,000.
It would be a lot, it would be a lot higher.
Yeah, is having.
Because at one
our-
time, I think it was
Yeah.
well over $50,000, $60,000.
Yeah.
They've actually gave us a better rate a couple
Right.
years ago.
Yeah, because a lot of that, we can just do a phone call and then they can answer the questions. Usually we get our law firm to tackle the hard stuff or, like the HR issues where there's grievances with employees and the district and that kind of thing. So they handle like the heavy
And it's a little
stuff.
cheaper too because they've done the history with us, so they kind of know they don't have to do all the data. It's like going to a new doctor, they want to do all the tests, and your other doctor already knows some of the problems, so it's
So, yeah.
similar to that.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Ms. Funderburg. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. The next item is naming of auditor, and we're still in a contract with Raymond and Robson. May I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair, move the Board of Education employ the firm of Raymond and Robson to act as auditors for the Board of Education for the 2014-2015 school year, not to exceed $22,400. And discussion too.
Supported by motion made by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Funderburg. Discussion, Mr. Kudrick.
I was going to bring up that question about the contract. What is this, the last year for them?
I believe it was a 3-year, I believe.
Is this the third or the fourth year for them? I thought it was a 3-year contract.
I think
This-
this is our second. We only had those.
This is
We
either
just
the
got
second or
those.
the third. I
Yeah,
think
we
this is the
negotiated
second
a
or third.
reduction,
year.
it was 30,000.
All right, so there was another contract, okay. So this is the second time, so next year will be the last one.
Right.
When we
Okay.
changed auditors, we negotiated the price down.
Right,
Yeah.
but I thought this was the third year. If we could check on that just to find out. I thought it was the third year for this.
It might be.
I think
Time
this is
flies.
I
You
think
might
it's
be
the
right.
third year, but
Yeah.
I think this is the beginning of the third and not the
Yeah.
end.
Right, because October, when they do the audit, that's usually when they present it, so that's why I know they've done it twice, so we need to look at, either are we gonna send it out for bid again, so put it on our calendar for next year.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Funderburg. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. The next item is adoption of previous policies. This is actually, we're just approving our existing policies as they stand. And we will continually still be looking at them and amending them as we go through. Like tonight, we have 2 of them that we're doing our first reading on. So can I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair,
Mr.
move the Board of Education adopt the existing policies of the Romulus Community Schools.
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Kraut. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. I need a motion for adjournment from our statutory meeting, please.
Madam Chair, I make a motion, we adjourn from the statutory meeting.
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Funderburg. Roll call, please. Or do we just do that by?
You can just do it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
6:19.
Statutory meeting's adjourned at 6:19. Okay, I'd like to call the regular meeting of July 14th, 2014 to order at 6:20 PM. Roll call, please.
Mr. Kudrick,
Present.
Ms. Bowles.
Here.
Ms. Kraut,
Here.
absent excuse. Ms. Funderburg,
Here.
Beard,
Here.
Ms. Buckley is here.
We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the next item is our consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature by the Board of Education and will be placed upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items. If any member of the board or any citizen requests discussion of an item, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will become the first item of business under the report of the superintendent portion of the agenda. Item A, it reads 1, it should be item A. Approval, to approve the minutes of the Truth and Taxation hearing of June 23rd, 2014, and minutes of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of June 23rd, 2014. B, approval, to approve the personnel actions as submitted by Lisa Nassel, Interim Director of Human Resources. Retirement of Dorothy West, Principal of Hale Creek. C, approval to approve the bills for payment. Pardon me?
Recall.
Oh, I sure did, I'm sorry. There's also a recall of a secretary number 2 at Romulus Elementary. Item C, approval to approve the bills for payment as submitted by Dr. Vincent Menza, Director of Business and Operations, in the amount of $760,546.43. A motion for the consent agenda, please.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented. Support.
Motion made by Ms. Buckley, supported by Mrs. Funderburg. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Our next item is our report of from the superintendent.
Good evening, everyone. First item on the agenda is the financial advisor, and I'm going to turn that over to Dr. Menzel.
Our financial advisor, R.J. Norton, is here to take us through the requirements of Public Act 437, which requires us to recalculate our debt service millage every year. And he will take questions after his presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Menson. It's a pleasure to be here.
Is the mic on? Could you make sure that the mic is
Top button.
Okay.
You can take it out of that holder if you need to
Okay.
as well.
It is.
Top. Is it?
Hello.
Tap it. No, it's not. A top button.
Okay.
I don't think we need a battery, Steve.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Went to Belleville School.
So I'd like to go over some background information about the School Bond Loan Fund program, because the last bond issue the district had was in 1999, and the bond issue had been refunded a few times since then. And in 2010, the school district was levying 6.25 mils. But because the taxable value has declined so much over the few years, the taxable value had increased. And once the total equivalent millage for state qualified bonds exceeds 7 mils, then the district could choose to levy 7 mils and borrow the difference than what's needed to cover your debt payments from the School Bond Loan Fund program. So in 2011, the district levied 7 mils, even though if the district had levied enough to cover the debt payments without using the School Bond Loan Fund, it would have been more than that. So the district began this loan with the program because the total annual tax receipts were less than total debt payments. They were borrowing the difference from the state, and that accumulated this loan at a variable rate of interest. So when districts are participating in the school bond loan fund program, they begin in borrowing mode. And then the initial intent is that they would levy the same millage or a similar millage. And as the principal is paid down on the debt and the total debt payments decreases, and hopefully the tax base is increasing, then eventually that amount of millage, maybe it's 7 or more, will be more than enough to pay the debt payments. And then the district takes the excess tax receipts to gradually repay the loan with the state each year. That's when they enter repayment mode. And you will see that on some schedules. So there's about 120 school districts in the state that are participating in the school bond loan fund program. What has happened since the decline in taxable values is that districts were borrowing more from the school bond loan fund program and keeping the millage the same. Well, that's how the rules were designed. You could get by with levying 7 mills and just borrow more from the school bond loan fund program. Other school districts that weren't in the school bond loan fund program had no other choice but to increase their debt levy because they couldn't just borrow more from the school bond loan fund program because they may not have been at 7 mills yet. So that became a burden for the state because there are more schools in borrowing mode than there are in repayment mode, and the state has to come up with a bond issue to keep this program going. That began the need for this legislation. By the way, when bond issue is voted, what's being voted on is to issue a particular bond amount or not to exceed bond amount, and the district had it was not for a particular millage, so the district could levy whatever millage it takes according to the rules to cover the debt payments on the time or according to the school bond loan fund rules. So that even though the bonds were voted, it wasn't for a particular millage. I'd like to go over this slideshow about this new public act that was voted on during the lame duck session in 2012, became effective at the end of March of 2013. With the school bond loan fund loan, there's a mandatory loan repayment date, which I refer to as MLRD. And it is 6 years after the last bond payment at the time of the first borrowing. So the last bond payment for the district's in 2029, so your mandatory loan repayment date is 2035. That does not change unless the state were to, by very special exception, grant a longer mandatory loan repayment date for some reason. And that's not expected to happen, but it is part of the law that you could ask Department of Treasury for a longer mandatory loan repayment date. So part of this already mentioned, the mandatory loan repayment date's 6 years after your last bond payment, it's 2035. Part of the law is that each year, starting in 2014, a millage projection is updated and sent to Department of Treasury to calculate the millage needed. And how we project the annual change in taxable value for this millage projection is governed by Public Act 437. And that is, for purposes of filing with Treasury, millage schedules must utilize a statutory taxable value projection. The annual percent change in taxable value is limited to not greater than the current 5-year historical average for the next 5 years, and the lesser of 3% or the 20-year historical average, but not less than 0 for after 5 years. So how we project the change in taxable value is heavily influenced by the 5-year historical average and the 20-year historical average. The millage projections be updated each year starting in 2014 for the annual review of millage to determine whether a millage increase is needed or a millage reduction is possible. Well, that is possible in in later years, and I'm going to explain that. The projected year of final school bond loan fund repayment using this millage projection cannot be longer than the mandatory loan repayment date unless there's an applicable limit for the percent increase in debt levy, because there's some phase-in limits to limit the amount of the percent increase in millage. The amount of the percent increase in debt levy, if needed for 2014, could be limited to the average percent change in taxable value since 2009. The percent increase in debt levy, if required for 2015 and beyond, could be limited to the annual decline in taxable value only when there's a when the percent change in taxable value for 1 year is negative. If the change in taxable value shows positive growth after in 2015 or later, then the district may have to increase the millage to whatever it takes for compliance with the mandatory loan repayment date. When I refer to compliance with mandatory loan repayment date, what I mean is that the projected last year of school bond loan fund loan repayment is not later than the mandatory loan repayment date of 2035. And the maximum required debt levy is 13 mils for state qualified debt. The debt levy, some districts, they're going to have their millage ratcheted up because of these new rules. And the debt levy could be reduced in subsequent years provided there's MLRD compliance, but the millage cannot be below the computed millage set at the time of the most recent qualified bond issue or at the time that they first enter the school bond loan fund program. The millage may also decline below the computed millage in the final year of school bond loan fund loan repayment. So if, in certain cases, if the 5-year historical average taxable value improves and or the 20-year historical taxable value improves, then the millage could come back down again. And we're going to see that in your example. For purposes of the annual review of millage, the school bond loan fund interest rate at that time of the annual review of millage can be utilized for the projection. And the current interest rate on the school bond loan fund loan is 3.5227. So it's fairly low compared to where it was a few years ago. So it's a variable rate of interest currently at about 3.5. The school bond loan fund interest rate utilized at the time of a new bond issue is 5%. Prior to Public Act 437, compliance with the mandatory loan repayment date was only needed at the time that new state qualified bonds were issued, with the exception of refunding bonds. PA 437 now requires that this be reviewed each year. So, if I didn't mention it already, my estimate is of the 120 school districts that are in the school bond loan fund program, I estimate half are going to increase their millage. And some substantially. Your district, not as much. This is the, and by the way, you have a copy of this millage projection. And maybe I should add, this legislation, PA 437, used to be Senate Bill 770. It was held up in legislation for a long time, and a lot of firms, including our own, were combating against it. And there were a few things that were inserted at the final hours of this legislation that lessened the harm of it. One of which was the possibility to reduce the millage after it was ratcheted up as the 5-year and 20-year average improved. So that was a great benefit that they threw that in. But there's still some parts of that legislation I'm very much opposed to, and maybe they could change that next year, because there is talk about inserting new legislation to lessen the damage of this. So what we have is the first schedule is the statutory taxable value millage projection for 2014. On the left side, we have the total annual debt payments, And to the right of that, we have the projected growth of your tax base. And above that, we have the taxable value growth history. So the 5-year average taxable value growth is actually negative 6.88%. So when projecting the taxable value, we're using negative 6.88 for 5 years, and the 20-year historical average of 2.88% for beyond 5 years. Some districts could limit the percent increase in millage to the 5-year percent change in taxable value. For your district, the 5-year percent change in taxable value is negative 30%. But in order for compliance with the School Bond Loan Fund program, your district only needs an 18% increase from 7 mils to 8.25 mils to comply with the mandatory loan repayment date. So your district does need a millage increase, but you don't have to limit the millage increase to a certain percentage, because that 5-year percent change in TV is 30%, and you're only increasing your millage by 18%. And as you see, there's a column called mills needed all debt. That's what I call the would-be mills. That's what the millage would be if the district didn't participate in the School Bond Loan Fund program. So 10.94 mils, 11.49, much higher than the 8.25. So the districts could levy 8.25 mils and borrow the difference in what's needed to cover your debt payments from the state, and continue to increase the loan. The current loan amount's about 7.3 million. District levies 8.25 mils this year. That would increase the borrowing amount by 2.3 million, accrued interest on the loan by about 278,000.
I had a question, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I just want to make sure I cleared up. So, just so I'm clear, you said that we need to increase it to 8.25, which is a total of 18 mils? Is that how you
That's
said
an 18% increase from 7 to
18%.
Okay,
7
okay,
to
okay.
8.25.
That makes sense. I'm trying to figure what the
Okay,
18% was.
Yeah.
Okay, the percentage of an increase. Okay,
Yep,
gotcha.
percent, I'm sorry. So at 8.25 mils, by the way, so the would-be mills, when that's higher than 8.25, the district's in borrowing mode. And if you look in the School Bond Loan Fund activity box, there's a column that said borrowed, repaid. That's the annual borrowing or repayments. There's a point in time, because the debt payments on your bonds are going down, that they bump up and then they go down. And also the taxable value is increasing, where the would-be mills is less than 8.25. And that's when the district continues to levy like 8.25 mils or whatever it is, and use the excess tax receipts to gradually repay the loan with the state. And as you see, the 8.25 continues on until the 2035, which would be taxes levied in 2014 to pay the November of 2034 and the May of 2035 debt payments, and repay the final loan balance in that year. So that's the proof that at 8.25 mils, the district could be out of the School Bond Loan Fund in the same year as the final mandatory loan repayment date. Notice in the taxable value growth history, the annual change in taxable value for 2010 is negative 12.87%. That's going to fall off the 5-year average next year. That's a good thing, because hopefully the change in taxable value next year is less than negative 12.87. In fact, the next schedule shows the estimated millage, statutory millage projection for 2015 if the annual change in taxable value that year were 0%. And the 5-year average goes from negative 6.88% to negative 4.31%. So because if that were to happen, oh, and the 20-year average, that goes down a little bit from 2.88 to 2.58. But if that were to happen, then the district could decrease the debt millage to 7.48 mils. And then the year following off the 5-year average next year is negative 6%. So it's possible that the debt millage could fall back, but it wouldn't be able to fall below 7 mils until the year of final loan repayment. So hopefully, the millage will bump up in 2014, and the 5-year taxable value growth will increase, and maybe that will be more of a benefit than any decrease in the 20-year average taxable value, and that your millage may return to 7 mils over a few years. Depends on your taxable value growth. The last slide I have is the taxable value growth history. So everything really, all the negatives start to happen in 2009. And the district had lost, 30% of the tax base since 2009. And the increase in millage is 18%. So if I didn't mention it already, some districts weren't at 7 mils. And while their taxable values were declining, they had no other choice but to increase their millage. But districts that were participating in the School Bond Loan Fund program, they're just applying to the rules at the time, and they were just able to borrow more. So you could view this a few different ways, but one is that you're increasing your millage because you didn't have to the last few years. Any questions?
Can we have a copy of this PowerPoint?
Yes. Okay.
Will it have on there, like a email address or something that we can have if we do have more questions? This is a
Sure.
lot of information to take in.
Yep, I have
So,
one extra card for
you
you.
know,
and
I
Dr.
need
Menzel
some-
knows how-
I need some
how to
help.
get a hold of
I
me.
don't know nobody else. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you very much. It was my pleasure being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, could we,
Yes.
I'd like to see this whole thing on the web, on our website, so that if people have questions, they can, because there's some additional information that wasn't in the PowerPoint that is
Frequently
in,
asked questions
so like the frequently asked questions, I think that would be a good piece to put on our website so that people can get a general knowledge of what's going on, and if they have additional questions, they can speak with you.
My question is, we've already gotten, the summer tax bills have already gone out, so at what point, when will we raise it from 7 to 8 next quarter?
There has to be a new resolution
Right.
at the board, at the next board meeting. That's the way
So then that would be the January bill,
that would be, yes.
December bill, the winter bill. So this is not something that they would have, they could still do 50% summer, 50% winter, or are they gonna have to come up with 100% in the summer?
Of 2015,
Right.
we're still doing the 100% collection.
So that would include the bond debt too?
Yes.
Right.
Madam Chair, one other, and I guess it just kind of came off of what Ms. Kraut mentioned, was then included in our explanation for how we're switching over to summer collection. I think we need to make sure that it's perfectly clear, because we've been saying that this will not be a tax increase. I don't want it to look like, we increase the taxes because, I mean, we're having to do it because of the new law. It's not because we're changing it to the summer tax collection. It's because the new law is impacting what we collect and how we collect it. So I think we need to probably put together some verbiage to make that perfectly clear so that, you know, people aren't being, you know, the message is crystal clear. They know what's going on because, you know, rumors get started and we had this whole big, oh, well, they lied to us, and no, we didn't lie. These are the things that happened. So I think we just need to make sure that we communicate what's actually going on. So I know that we were talking about possibly getting the city like a little PowerPoint slideshow presentation. I think maybe that might be an extra slide that we
It's in your
probably need
packet,
to
but we can make a
insert.
revision to it, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Great point.
I'm making a note here, so just
No,
like.
that's fine. Give you a few minutes.
So are there any other questions? And I'll get a copy, make sure we get a copy of the PowerPoint that was presented tonight.
And well, this will be at the next meeting.
Is that in the next, our next meeting is when we'll have a
That's what
okay. Okay. All right. Excellent.
The next item is approval of
Thank
Romulus
you.
Elementary School principal.
Need a motion? Need a motion? Madam Chair?
Mr. Kudrick?
I move the Board of Education accept the employment of Gretchen Nataro as principal at the Romulus Elementary School effective August 8, 2014.
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Buckley. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
The next item is the Director of Grants and Curriculum Contract, Ms. Corenza Smith.
Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Education approve the contract as presented to employ Corinza Smith as Director of Grants and Curriculum of the Romulus Community Schools effective July 14th, 2014.
Support.
I have a motion by Mrs. Buckley, supported by Mr. Kudrick.
Comment.
Comment, Mrs. Bowles?
Yeah, in regards to the Director of Grants Curriculum contract, I know, that this position is available, but I'm thinking with the situation that the school board or the district is in right now, is there any way we can maybe hold off on filling this position right now and see if there's a way maybe we can, delegate out responsibilities just for a while because of the situation that we're in? I know that, with the curriculum that we have right now, I haven't seen any information brought to the table of any big changes to it as of right now. So that's just a question that I'm bringing out there, because I know right now it's set for $100,000, is what it said in the contract. And I'm just like, right now with our situation, we need to be trying to save as much money as we
It's
can.
not at $100,000.
One that I saw said $100,000.
No.
I think you were talking about
Oh.
Benefits.
benefits.
Okay, so that's that, but the benefits with it is what?
Which one do you got?
Yeah.
Right here's
One
what
that I had said
Here.
$100,000.
Here.
Okay, maybe this is what I'm looking
That's the
at.
benefit
You're
part.
looking at different, some of the insurance.
The
and
fridge
stuff.
benefits of
Yeah,
hospital, so is that the whole amount right there, the $100,000?
General
And then right here is the
Hospitalization.
95 or 92?
92.
So 92,000?
And that's, and Madam Chair,
Mr.
if I
Kudrick?
could share some, because I did ask and inquired about this position myself, and I was supplied some information. This position from the previous person held to now is approximately about $8,000 less a year. Also, it increased the working days by 20. They're not granted as many sick days, and they're not paid for as many holidays as the previous person was, so it is a savings considered what they were.
And,
So the person's working 20 days more for a lot less money.
And Madam Chair, I know there's, if I'm not mistaken, there's a lot of curriculum changes that are coming down the pike that we need to address. I was part of, before, when we tried to do without a curriculum director, and we had 2 people trying to fill that slot, and we got so far behind with curriculum that having to stay down, breathing down our necks. So we don't need to get, it's not beneficial to our children to get behind the 8 ball with curriculum. I mean,
Well,
that's what we're here for, to educate our kids, and
Right,
that's what we need.
and the other,
someone to-
another duty of this person is also to
Okay.
monitor our Title I funding, and we definitely don't want to lose that.
And we also, to get additional grants. I mean, those are all things to bring in revenue to our district, so this is just something I firmly believe that we have to have. We cannot let this go.
I'm not
Like I
saying,
said, because I was part of that. When we did that before, it didn't work.
well, that was just my 2 cents. Okay?
Yeah,
It's
I
just my
understand.
2 cents.
That's fine.
You know, I was just looking at trying to save as much money as we can for the district. I didn't know if that was ever brought to the table before, and I was just thinking, you know, we are, you know, in the process at one time of trying to figure out how to combine different departments and different responsibilities, and so, you know, I know that we haven't had one thus far, so I was looking at how long it's been thus far in regards to us not having one, and seeing if there's a possibility that we could hold off on it. That's all.
Right,
Because
right.
my thing, Tamika, like I said, I was part of it before when we gave half of it to high school.
And half to an
And half
elementary.
to a second, to an
Elementary.
elementary principal, for them to try to do the job. It didn't work,
And thank you for correcting me. It is
Didn't work.
92,000.
so.
Sorry about that. And annual compensation for step 2 is 95,000. Okay.
And
Okay,
that is decreased from the previous person, so.
And so far, all of the new people we've hired, we've decreased the contracts, so. So I have a motion made by Mrs. Buckley, supported by Mrs. Kudrick. Mr. Kudrick, I'm
Pam's
sorry.
not down there.
I'm sorry.
I'll give you that look that I get. I know how it is.
Supported by Mr. Kudrick. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, motion carries 5-1.
The next item on the agenda is the administrative assistant to the superintendent
Madam,
contract.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move the Board of Education approve the contract as presented to employ Marilyn Wasson as the administrative assistant to the superintendent, Romulus Community Schools, effective July 7th, 2014, otherwise known as in charge.
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Buckley. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. And I'd like to say welcome aboard to Mrs. Wasson.
And Ms. Smith.
Ms. Smith.
And Mrs.
Welcome
Grant.
Welcome back
Back,
to
yes.
Ms. Smith.
Could Mrs. Smith please come up? We'd like to introduce you.
Enjoy this at the table.
Get in the hot seat.
You do, watch the ledge.
Right, yes,
Yes,
please
watch
watch
the
the ledge.
That's why we put the little one on the end.
Mrs. Smith, can you give us just a little history so the community can get to know you?
Yes, I feel like I was born and raised here in Romulus. I started my teaching career at Merriman. I taught 4th grade for 7 years. Then I was the Title I Learning Specialist at WIC for 4 years. Then I was the principal at Merriman. Unfortunately, they closed. So then I was the principal in Van Buren for 4 years, and now I am back here as the curriculum director. I'm very, very excited to be back home. It does feel like home. I missed everybody while I was gone, so it's good to be back, and I'm ready to work hard to get Romulus where we need to be and make sure that our students are achieving.
Thank you.
Thank you, welcome back.
Okay.
The next item is the summer tax collection PowerPoint that must be created. There's a copy in your packet, and now we have to amend it.
Right.
No, right?
The other reason for giving it to you too is if there is anything else on here other than the new changes that we have to make, if anybody has any suggestions. The intent is to put this on our cable channel. Were we gonna put it on the website too, or?
On the website.
On the website,
And also-
at the city cable channel and our, school cable channel.
And so we are gonna make that correction for
Right.
what we have to, by law, what we have to do, right?
Right.
You just have to make a note, PA 437 debt levy increase from 7 to 8.25. Okay.
When you say PA 437, you might wanna say that's
Public
a
Act.
public act.
Right,
Because a lot of
437
people
debt
won't
levy.
know, might not know what that means. So we need to be clear, so people, when
From
they read
seven
it, they
oh
understand.
to 8.25, and then I might maybe I'll put a thing to see the website for the frequently asked questions.
Yeah, that'd be
That
great.
they could look at those questions that were there. On PA 437, okay. I will edit and change it again. This wasn't too bad. I do not do PowerPoint, and so this was a chore for me, so it took me a while to get it down pat.
But you know how now.
I know how now. I learned how to do paint and everything.
Did a good job. Thank you for putting it together.
The next item is local 64 layoffs cafeteria.
I thought we didn't already do these?
I thought we did those as well,
I thought we did it when we,
when we changed over for the contract stuff.
I thought this was already done about a month or so ago.
Right.
Okay. Okay. I thought we did, but we didn't do it named, I know that for a fact. I thought we did it by positions, but,
Do we need to read all of these names into record?
No.
Okay.
Should it be changed from transportation operations to cafeteria operations?
that was my next one.
All right, so we need to have
We
a,
have
It's good, it says transportation.
We
on
need
it.
a motion to amend this when we read it, so that it
Well,
should
if we
read
just-
on
If
the
we just
private.
read it, we read it with the amendment in it.
Correct.
Oh,
On the
yeah, pointing fingers
privatization
already.
of cafeteria operations.
There it is.
Are you ready, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Recommend motion pursuant to board action on the privatization of cafeteria operations. Move the Board of Education of Romulus Community School accept the recommendation of administration to lay off the following members of Local 64's position for their employment through the school district. And there's 33 people from the cafeteria.
Effective. Very bottom.
Sorry about that. Effective at the end of the day, June 12, 2014.
support.
Motion made by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Funderburg. And I just like to add that this is based on our deficit elimination plan for the 2013-14 school year.
You know, it would be the 14-15, right?
Mm-hmm. Should be 14,
You're right,
15.
it should read for 2014-15 school year. Okay. So I have a motion by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Funderburg. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 5-1.
district membership. And I did send out information on each of the memberships. MASB, that's the Michigan Association of School Boards. And that provides a service for our school board there. Metro Bureau, they offer a lot of support. We get our natural gas through them for the district, and it's about 10 to 15% savings. We'll know more after we get all of our bills tallied. But the savings that we achieve through our natural gas pays for the membership about 5 to 10 times over in the savings there.
Can we vote on these separately, board, please? Thank you.
But if she could give us a little information about the top two, like you told us about how we get the natural gas through the Metropolitan, if you'll tell us the advantage to staying in,
Middle cities,
yes,
be the next one, right?
right?
Okay, I was going. I'm
Go ahead and go
sorry, I
through them, and
wasn't
then
going
we
acco-
will,
I was going
I
From
will,
the bottom up, it works.
Yeah, I was going according to the agenda items instead of the.
It doesn't
All
matter
right,
what.
so,
As long as you
Middle
cover them all.
cities, that's, they offer lobbyists for us and also assessment, evaluation, adult and alternative ed support, career, technology. And that is the one that offers the lobbying for education at the state level.
I guess I sort of think that that's a great thing, but that's why we elect someone to represent us at the state level, and that's sort of their job to support us with our needs. And so the way the others schools may want it may not be exactly what the way the Romulus schools would need it, and so I'm not sure that that's really an advantage.
I looked up some information in regards to, on their line about their risk management trust.
for
And
which
This
organization,
is
Middle
for the,
Cities?
the
That's what
middle
I'm talking about.
cities too. And this is where I was kind of talking about earlier about feeling like stuff kind of overlapped. Because I looked it up and it was saying how it provides following coverages for like property, general liability, auto liability, errors of omission, and employment practices. And it said the trust has returned over 22.7 million in surplus to its members since its inception. But when I got to thinking about this, I started saying, okay, well, we have the lawyer, and then I kept saying, okay, how do I know the lawyer hasn't had something already written up, and has this already been looked at by our lawyer? And it was just like, so when I looked at the amount also that it was asking for, and I felt like, personally, I felt more comfortable going with the lawyer, which is why I voted the way I did. But I didn't feel comfortable going with this and adding an additional amount on here, knowing that there's a possibility that the lawyer might be able to help us with some of this too, so.
right.
Madam Chair, I have a question. For Middle Cities, for the past year, have we used them?
We've been with it. We didn't add anything new this year.
No, but I'm saying how much
How much
how much
services did we get
service
as the
did we
Romulus
use, what
schools?
did we use them for this
I
past year?
cannot tell you that. I can just tell you from the 6 months that I had here.
$7,000.
that-
Okay.
And what did we use them for in the 6 months that they helped us with?
In my 6 months, I have not used them.
Yeah,
Madam Chair?
I didn't think we had.
I thought we'd get, I
I
thought
thought
we,
we eliminated them
Hold on.
last year.
Madam Chair,
Right.
a couple of years ago, if I recall, the board didn't approve Middle Cities.
Right.
So last year, I mean, I wasn't on the statutory meeting, so was it approved last year?
I don't think so.
I don't think Middle Cities
was
Okay.
No.
So that answers mine.
I don't think so. I think.
Okay, I thought we took that out a couple of years ago.
I think Middle Cities was what was eliminated. Metro.
I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah, because we
Bureau,
were
we
looking
kept
at
it.
each one,
Right,
but I'm pretty
right.
sure that was.
Middle Cities
Middle
was
Cities
eliminated
was
2
the-
years ago. I
right.
remember that. When Mr. Weiss was here, so.
Yeah, that was my membership there for that one.
So if we can vote on them separately, probably
Yeah,
that'd be the best.
we'll do, I'm just gonna go ahead and let her finish with her explanation.
Yeah, I want
That's
to know
fine.
about the advanced, yeah.
The next
That's
one
on North
is the
Central
Michigan High School
Accreditation.
Athletic Association. That's for all of our sports teams.
And we have to have that.
And there's
Yeah, we gotta have
there's
that.
a reason for that.
That's a no-brainer.
Advanced Ed, That is our accreditation for our school system and our school improvement organization,
North
so
Central
our
Place.
schools, NCA.
Sandy.
Right. And if we don't have that, our
They have
students
North
can't,
Central
we're not an
accreditation.
accredited
That's
school,
what this is now.
and our students are gonna suffer when they try to apply.
Well, it's also for the school improvement
Part of
plans
it,
too.
yeah, part
It's
of it,
school
yeah.
improvement
I
plans
don't know
too.
about that.
It affects it.
Okay.
It
Are we
affects
gonna
more
vote on
of the
each one of
SATs
these?
and ACTs.
We'll do each one
Yeah,
of
but
these.
it
Okay, you
affects it
wanna,
in that-
okay, Madam Chair,
You gonna read them?
We're gonna do each one individually.
You gonna read them, Cheryl? Or you want me?
Start with
you can
the
go ahead
first
now so I
one.
can do the supports and.
Let's start with advanced ed since that's
Alright.
the first one on our list.
You
So
want-
can I have a motion?
We're doing advanced ed first,
All right, you want one motion at a time?
Yeah.
please.
All right, Madam Chair, move the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the superintendent to join advanced ed for the 2014, 2015 school year at the cost of $4,550.
Support and discussion.
Supported by, motion made by Mr. Kudrick to join advanced ed, supported by Mrs. Funderburg. Discussion, Mrs. Funderburg.
Okay, Madam Chair, I have a question. Right here, we have our schools listed. My question is with the concern with the community high school. If in the fall, we move forward,
I'm dropping that.
on the program not being instituted, will we get a reimbursement for the 650 off of, for this particular school, or
Yes.
are we kinda eating the cost, or what happens?
No, we won't submit our membership until we made a decision on it.
On community.
Okay, so when the check is cut, you're cutting it for the other schools minus that one until we find out what the fall holds? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Funderburg. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 5-1.
You ready?
I just have a quick, Sandy, were you?
I should have been faster. I approve.
Okay. The next one is, a motion to accept the recommendation.
Maybe we should, I approve with, maybe we should have said it
What?
with, made the motion with the correction if needed for the community high school. In the make the, change it to the motion.
Sorry, Lisa.
Well, right now, community high school's still on the
Still,
books.
But it's
community high
still on
school's
there
still on the
right
rules right now.
Right now.
But do we have to pay that?
No, we
No.
don't pay,
They're
we
not
won't
paying
pay
it
until
until-
September, so we'll have a
until
decision November.
September.
All right, because it says we're gonna, the motion says we're gonna pay X amount, and so that's why I'm saying it should read with an adjustment if needed for community high
Oh, we
school.
could probably make the motion as that to read as,
With an adjustment if needed for community high school.
Want to read the motion?
Yeah, just add that sentence in.
well,
there.
do we need to do a new motion since we already voted?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want me to, I'll put it down not to exceed, okay?
No.
Because we,
You got-
I mean, we'll take it out, it won't go higher than that.
Can't you
Right.
just just do it over?
That's what I'd say.
Just do
You
it
gotta
over just to
redo
be
it.
on the safe
You
side.
gotta redo the motion, because it's already been
It's
voted,
already
motion and
Can
passed,
yeah.
so
we
you gotta
just say
redo
that
it.
we make a motion to amend the prior motion? There you
Okay,
go.
Mrs. Kraut
That's all you gotta do.
makes a motion to approve,
the
to amend the
prior-
motion.
To allow for a change if needed for community high school to be removed from the cost.
To
Support.
allow a change in cost if needed.
Excuse me.
Due to removal
Yeah.
of program.
Reduction of programs,
Community high
removal.
school.
Okay, so Mrs. Kraut has made a motion to amend the last vote to allow a change in cost if needed due to removal of a program. Can I have a
Are you gonna
support?
it?
You supported,
You already
I did.
supported.
Okay,
It's all-
so
it's
motion
already
made by
approved.
Mrs. Kraut, supported by Mr. Kudrick, all in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, 5-1. Okay, the next item, I need a motion to, to accept the recommendation to join Middle Cities.
Madam Chair, I move the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the superintendent to join Middle Cities Association for 2014-2015 school year at the cost of $7,348.
Motion made by Mr. Kudrick. I have support.
Just because,
Support.
you just gotta get it moving. that's all.
Support.
Yeah.
Supported by Mrs. Buckley. All in favor? Nays?
Nay.
Motion fails, 6-0.
You ready for the next one?
Yep. I move that the Board of
Are you gonna read
I
them or
need
you
a
want me-
motion.
I'll just read them. You ready?
Yes.
Here we go. The next one. Move the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the superintendent to join the Michigan Institute of Educational Management for 2014-2015 school year at the cost of $365.
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Buckley. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
All right, you ready?
Yep.
Move the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the superintendent to join Metropolitan Detroit Bureau of School Studies for the 2014-2015 school year at a cost of $1,785.86.
Question?
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Funderburg. Mrs. Bolt.
Yeah, this is another one that I really looked at real good, and I kind of, going off of my experience that I had with Michigan Association of School Boards, and looking at like what they said, the service they provide, the Bureau provides reliable information for school leaders. I marked that off as Michigan Association of School Boards. It's our strong belief that in order to find out what school leaders think, we must bring them together and provide ample opportunities for the expression of ideals and discourse between leaders of varied opinions. Michigan Association of School Boards. We give our school leaders many opportunities to lead and excel through our seminar programs and meetings. I put down Michigan Association of School Boards. This other one, they had talked about legal challenges. I just drew a line and said that reminded me of the lawyers that we have. And then it said each year graduating seniors from member school districts receive scholarships from the Metro Bureau to assist with the cost of post-secondary education. I wrote a question saying how many scholarships have we received from them in the past year that adds up or equals to $1,785.85. Then I wrote, the Metro Bureau now offers a comprehensive superintendent search. We just got that through the Michigan Association of School Board. So what I did is I just went through and checked off each one looking for something different. What do they offer us and compare it to what we already have?
And the one thing that Mrs. McNally mentioned was the consortium for the energy and the insurance purchasing arrangements that they use. Like she said, we purchase our natural gas through them, and we're realizing a 10 to 15% savings.
And
That's just
because they can
information she's
buy as
giving
a
us,
bigger
though.
group, so they can get a better cost and pass
Right.
that on to us.
Right.
That's a consortium.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Funderburg. All in favor? Aye.
No, actually, that
Opposed?
was supported
Nay.
by, that was supported by me. That was supported by Buckley. That was me.
I'm
Supported.
sorry, I had it down as Funderburg.
No, I got it. I thought that was me.
No, it's,
You
Both
know,
of
you
you
beat
did.
me.
Both
Yeah, I
of you
beat
did it.
okay.
The
Motion
twins.
made by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Buckley.
You wanna get it right?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 5-1.
Ready?
Ready.
Move the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the superintendent to join Michigan Association of School Boards at a cost of $5,339.
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Funderburg. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Last but not least, move the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the superintendent to join the Michigan High School Athletic Association for 2014-2015 school year at no cost to the district.
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Funderburg. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0.
Ready for the next one? I'm on a roll.
Amendment.
You ready?
I'm
All right.
getting it, just a second.
Let me know when you're
Oh, you
ready.
going so fast, I've been, got me got right in front.
Okay,
Go, we gotta pop, we're on a budget here.
well, we need to do the first reading, you still
I
have to
am.
read it, so.
Go ahead, I'll let you
Okay.
read it.
I'll read it after you make your motion, then go ahead.
Madam Chair, recommend the motion to move the Board of Education accept the proposed policy 1,300 as prescribed for the first reading to amend the board policy to change organizational meetings from July to January as required by state law.
Support. Motion made by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Funderburg. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Do you want to read the part that's whited out there?
I'm gonna do the first reading on it. I probably should have read it before we took the vote. But 6-0. If you look at your board policy, number 1300 under meetings, and then under organizational, it reads, the board holds its organizational meeting, it's in bold, it says January now. The meeting shall be called to order by the superintendent or ranking officer of the preceding board. I believe superintendent's going to be, is that
Superintendent's
removed?
crossed out.
That's stricken. Or ranking officer of the preceding board, or it'll be up to the board to decide who that person will be. We can make that president, call to order, because that's who does call to order is president, so we can just change that wording to read.
The ranking officer, so that
Officer.
way if the president's not here, the vice president.
Of the preceding board, okay. So board to decide, we don't need that part on there. Who shall serve as presiding officer until the election of a temporary chairperson, who shall in turn serve until the election of a president. The board shall at the organizational meeting designate depositories for school funds, designate those persons authorized to sign checks, contracts, agreements, and purchase orders, designate a day, place, and time for regular meetings, which shall be held at least once every month, designate those persons authorized to use safe deposit box, determine fee charged to individuals who request notice of board meetings, designate a day for regular study sessions of the board, which is optional, designate an administrator to assume specified responsibilities of the, and this is of the treasurer or the secretary, designate the electronic transfer officer in accordance with policy 3300, and this is optional, and I don't think we have an electronic, that's just our business operations person. The regular meeting, the board holds at least one regular meeting each month. The regular meeting is held on the fourth Monday of each month at 6 p.m. in the board office unless otherwise announced and posted. The district will post a notice of the regular meeting schedule at the entrance to the principal office of the board and/or the principal office of the district within 10 days after the organizational meeting. The schedule of regular meetings or the regular meeting date may be changed by the board as provided in current law. Special meetings. Special meetings of the board may be called by the president, chair of the board, or by two board members by providing the other board members a written notice of the date, time, and place of the special meeting. The notice may be served by delivering the notice to the board member personally or by fax or by email with return notice, or by leaving the notice at each member's residence with a person of the household at least 24 hours before the meeting is to take place. The notice may also be served by mail addressed to the member at the member's address on file in the district office at least 72 hours before the meeting is to take place. Service of the notice may be by a board member or an employee of the district. Emergency meetings. The board may meet in emergency session in the event of severe and imminent threat to the health, safety, or welfare of the public when 2/3 of the members elected to, appointed, and serving on the board decide that that delay would be detrimental to the efforts to lessen or respond to the threat. Information, work, study sessions. Information, work, or study sessions of the board shall be held as called by the president. Such sessions shall be open to the public and properly posted as board meetings. No action by the board shall be taken at such meetings. Adjourned meetings. Meetings may be adjourned and reconvened as provided by law. And this is the amended policy. Okay, and the next one I have is board policy amendment 1152, which is election of officers and length of the term. And I'll do the first reading and then I'll take a motion. Okay, this is for policy number 1152, election of officers and length of term. Election of board officers shall occur at the first meeting of the board held in January. That's where our change is. Election of officers shall be by a majority of the full board. Where no such majority exists on the first ballot vote, a second vote shall be cast for the two candidates who receive the greatest number of ballot votes. Except for those appointed to fill a vacancy, officers shall serve for and until their respective successors are elected and shall qualify. May I have a motion, please, to accept this policy?
Madam Chair, I recommend the Board of Education accept a proposed policy of 1,152, election of officers and length of term for the first reading as presented to change the election of officers from July to January as required by state law.
Support.
Motion made by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Kraut. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
So that's changing from July to
To
January.
January.
Correct. And this is required by Public Acts 186 and Public Act 187. Okay, and that is the end of superintendent's report. The next item on our agenda are communications and expressions from the public.
I'm not technically the public, but Ms. Funderburg wanted me to share information this evening. So
Okay.
go ahead, unless there's public who wants to share. No? Okay. So we held a meeting with the Inkster parents on Thursday, June 26th at the Inkster Public Library. It was a suggestion from actually Sean Dixon at Romulus Elementary that we maybe wanted to reach out in a more formal manner than what we'd been doing with some of our coffee talks, I think, to kind of just get feel for what they thought worked, what they thought could be improved upon. I had sent an email out to the district administration, but and to Ms. Funderburg, who had attended, and she just kind of asked me to share. 3 major challenges came out from the meeting. That was attended by mostly Romulus staff, but we did have some Starfish agency members, Ms. Shelby from the transition team, and a couple Inkster parents. The first challenge was that they felt students had a pretty strong feeling of feeling unwelcomed or disconnected with the staff and with the students. Kind of got lost in the shuffle. Some of the solutions we came up with were implement new enrollee mentor programs at all the buildings. The high school already has, and I believe the middle school as well, has mentoring programs for that first grade coming in. But we discussed that we'd maybe have new enrollee mentor programs where we assign 2013, 2014 Inkster students and all new enrollees from here on out a peer mentor for the year, connect them to staff that may volunteer to be staff mentors. It was suggested by Ms. Shelby to enlist a lot of the local college students as volunteers, run additional mentoring programs that way, and also to utilize or reinstate Inkster student resources such as the Delta Alumni Chapter. The second challenge was that Inkster students who once excelled are now behind and are failing, and that we have some different programming and material delivery schedule. The Starfish agency member mentioned that she noticed, being at the middle school, a lot of stuff that they were addressing in grades 6 and 7 weren't addressed in Inkster until grades maybe 8 or 9. So we're introducing stuff a little bit ahead of the curve. And so there's some gaps for our Inkster students. It was suggested maybe to connect students with Bright Futures for tutoring, ensure we have an Inkster bus to transport them home from the Bright Futures that we have at both the middle school and the high school. Now that we've had the students for a year and we have them identified and we have their weaknesses highlighted and we've kind of seen where they have the gaps, pull small groups for remediation, even if it's just solely an Inkster group. I think the Romulus focus was really to make it one group, not kind of differentiate between the two, but they actually suggested they may need to actually be pulled separately. Enlist, again, the local college students in the Delta Alumni Chapter. And the third challenge was increased parent involvement. And we kind of came up with utilizing Title I parent coordinators to reach out specifically to Inkster parents, host parent meetings, And there was a woman there who's with the Housing Commission in Inkster, and she actually suggested we use the Lemoyne's Garden Center. That it's a really good location, and there's a lot of Inkster parents that already come. Starfish already hosts a lot of parent play groups and a lot of parent meetings, and they suggested we just sorry, Dr. Mensa, I threw that at you. Piggyback onto the meetings they already have instead of trying to set up new ones. And it was mentioned by one of the parents that attended to even create a parent mentoring program to help them navigate the new education system. So overall, it was pretty productive, and we are definitely going to plan to have at least 2 more in the 14-15 school year with them.
Good job.
Yes.
That was very informative.
Good.
Did you want to add anything, Mrs. Vanderbilt?
No, I think we've kind of discussed it at the table. Our Inkster families, a lot of, that kind of prohibits them to really get engaged in our community is the transportation issue. And so I think with having activities that happen closer to home for them, I think would be an immediate solution. I don't know that it'd be the overall solution, but at least it's a beginning to be able to host some things that are a little bit closer to where they stay. The lady, and I cannot remember
I think her last name was Moore.
Moore. She actually gave us an invitation,
Moore, yeah,
to actually host some of those meetings in some of their complexes, apartment complexes, and so that way they can, just kind of come downstairs or however the setup is to actually participate in meetings. So again, I think Ms. Garcia did a wonderful job in engaging the parents that were there and just kind of getting down to the nitty gritty. I think one of the other things with the for our students who felt like they were falling behind, there was a huge transition for them. They only had 2 semesters, and coming from 2 semesters to now tri-semesters was also a very big challenge for them to have to adjust. So hopefully we'll see some improvement in the fall with the students that are returning as they, really get acclimated with the tri-semester setup. I think it was an adjustment for our students as well, but I think we've kind of gotten the hang of it because we've been doing it for a few years now, and so we pretty much know what to expect. So the meeting was positive, and I think we walked away with some viable solutions to what's actually going on. And so, as Ms. Garcia said, we'll just kind of touch base and make sure that we're doing the right thing. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay, the next item is, were there any more comments from, no? Okay, questions and concerns from board members? Mr. Kudrick?
Actually, I've got 2, really. Last Wednesday on the 9th, we lost a longtime resident who also, Gil White, who was the father of some of our district employees. Very active in the community in his younger days, and, wish the family our condolences. And also, Saturday, we lost another Romulus resident that just about everybody that lives in Romulus knew of him, and that was John Brimble of Captain Nemo's. He passed away. He's in a peaceful place now, but wish, regards and condolences to the family. But, just about everybody, I think every high school student in Romulus knew Captain Nemo's. If you knew any place in Romulus, that was it.
Or worked there?
A lot of young ladies worked at that place, yes.
Big John.
Big John, yes. He
Ms.
wasn't so
Bowles?
big. He was pretty skinny towards the end.
Yeah, he did.
None today.
Okay, Mrs. Kraut?
No, I don't have anything.
Mrs. Buckley?
No, nothing.
Anything else, Mrs. Vanderbilt?
Oof, it's gone. No.
Okay. And I just have 2 quick things. I gave everybody a copy of this. I got it from Mary Fayette, who's our Executive Director for Special Education with Wayne Risa. She provided it to our Wayne County Parent Advisory Committee, and it's something from Kathy Mary. You get it from Tri-County Alliance, and it's just a quick guide to the education legislation and what we're working on right now, so I gave a copy to all of the board members. I also was informed that we lost a member of our RCS family today. Mrs. Louise Briody passed away today. She's been battling with her illness for a while now, and I send our condolences out to her whole family and I want everybody to keep them in our prayers. So that's all I have for today.
Just one thing, has anybody contacted Mr. Hurst on that one?
Oh, I'm sure he is, yeah.
I mean, if we can make sure.
Right.
Is there any arrangements?
Catherine, okay.
Will you
good.
guys let us know?
Yeah, as soon as you guys know the arrangements, will you let us know, right?
Thank you.
Okay, and with that, I need a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Support. Motion by Mr. Kudrick, supported by Mrs. Funderburg. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Meeting is adjourned at 7:30.
Sleep tonight, he's getting out of here.